Bones just revealed new gameplay and is bringing you all that good pirate action on the Indian Ocean when it launches on November 8th. But we know why you're here. You want to know more about your ships and blowing stuff up. Well, to learn more about your fleet and combat so you can blow stuff up, we spoke to Senior Game Director Ryan Barnard. All right, let's start at the beginning. So can you tell me a bit about the Dhow, the first ship that players will captain in Skull and Bones?
Sure. So as you mentioned, the Dhow is our smallest ship. It's the first ship that you get when you start the game as you're rescued by what will eventually become your crew. It's what we call kind of the hunter-gatherer ship, where you learn how to gather resources and hunt some of the wildlife to basically collect things that you'll need to use to craft bigger and better ships, different weapons, and different armors.
In the early hours, will players have the tools to start fights with other ships, or is it more of a lay low until you can have a bigger boat situation?
If you choose to join a PvEP server, meaning PvP is enabled, you can engage with combat with other players at any time. Even on your Dhow, having little spear fights is actually kind of fun sometimes. You'll be upgrading your ships pretty quickly in the game to get something larger where you can start adding cannons, some more firepower, and then you might want to start taking on other players if you wish. It's a little bit easier to sink them and try to steal their loot.
As players craft newer and bigger ships, what relationship will they have with their fleet? Do you envision players having one flagship that pour all of their resources into upgrading, or maintaining an array of different ships for different activities?
At launch, we have 12 playable ships, which we call the captain's fleet, that we want the players to eventually acquire, unlock, and craft. And we definitely are more in the second camp of that question, where we want the ships to have things that they're best at. We call them kind of tools for the players. So it's not necessarily about upgrading to a certain ship and then that's all you use for the rest of the game. I'm sure players will get an affinity for the certain types of play styles and ships that they like the most, but there will always be a right tool for the job and maybe another ship that they want to craft and customize out in their loadout for taking on certain types of activities and certain type of pirating in the game. If you were given a contract or a job from another pirate to move a large quantity of stolen goods or dangerous material from one place to another, as one of our quests in the game, you're definitely going to want to use a cargo ship to be able to accomplish that. So you can use anything for most activities in the game, but there will always be the best choice for what you're trying to accomplish. Our pirate game, our open world pirate game with Skull and Bones is naval combat. And we definitely wanted to be best in class for this type of game, which is, ships on the sea. So our combat is very fast paced, and we also have depth added into the combat. So the types of weapons you choose versus your enemies will be important. As you're in combat, your crew actually kind of works into this combat fervor, which we call fury, and you'll be able to unleash what we call crew-to-crew attacks. That could turn into a boarding attack, and it's the only way you can actually get all the loot and make sure that nothing sinks to the bottom.
When you're fighting, what are the major elements you need to consider? For example, loadout, scouting, positioning, aiming, etc.
All of our weapons and armors are classified into an element. So it's based on, of course, we want to be grounded in reality of this 17th century kind of dawn of piracy. So things will be blunt, or maybe they will cause tearing of the sails, or they could cause flooding. Now, based on the target that you're taking on, they'll have some type of armor. It could be just wood. It might be stone. It might be clay, which we call terracotta in the armor section. And based on your loadout, you will have either a good effect, you'll have a bonus damage to that enemy type, or you might be neutral to that enemy type, or you might actually be doing less damage. Now, you're never completely inefficient. You can always take on any target with any type of loadout, but there will be better, more effective loadouts depending on what you're facing. Also, the sails are a way that you can actually slow your enemies, or eventually kind of rooting them in place for a temporary period of time where they can be easier to take out. Also, all of our enemy ships have something we call weak points. So depending on the class of the enemy ship, you'll see these large kind of outlined red targets. And if you take those out, you'll do a high amount of damage. You might start the ship burning. They'll have a different effect. It might change their behavior, but it'll definitely do a lot of damage.
Let's talk about when combat doesn't go your way. So is it possible to flee from combat and escape an enemy or reach a safe haven?
Yes, so it might be more difficult to escape a player, for instance, who's chasing you, but you definitely can flee. And we have safe areas around both dens in the game, which are kind of our mini pirate villages, if you will. So you can run and flee to get back to those areas, and then you'll be safe. Or you can just try to outrun or outsail some of the enemies if they're chasing you, which also can happen. In some of our plundering activities, the whole point might be just to kind of snatch and grab. So you get what you can while you can hold off the enemy, the reinforcements coming, and then you were always planning on running at some point. So that's definitely possible.
As a follow-up question, if combat really doesn't go your way, what happens to your ship and crew when you're sunk? What happens to your cargo?
So if you do happen to get sunk, which will happen to everyone, and you lose your ship, what happens is there's a wreck created where that happens, which has a certain amount of your materials. Then you'll respawn basically either at one of the dens or at the nearest outpost, depending on what you choose. And most of your materials are mailed back to you. They're insured, so you can get them in the mail. If you choose to then go sail out to your wreck and no one has looted it, like another player, then you will basically get all of your materials back, and it'll just have cost you a little bit of time, and you recraft your ship and you keep going.
With this wind, nothing can catch us!
Skull and Bones is an online open world or open sea game, and so you definitely will be coming across other players, and whether or not PvP can be an option is based on your choice. So are you on a PvP opt-in server or not? So if you are, then you have to be kind of wary and make sure that you're not going to become the target of another pirate. But at any point, if you feel like that's not for you, or you feel like there's maybe too many players that are engaging in PvP on the server you're on, you can just opt out immediately and go to a PvE only server, and you don't lose any progress. There's no penalty, there's no problem switching back and forth. And then maybe you progress a little further, you get a different ship, you upgrade some of your weapons, and maybe you want to jump back into a PvP enabled server, because there are benefits for playing and risking more on the PvP enabled servers.
Alright, well I think I'm ready for combat. Thank you all for watching. Check out the Skull and Bones worldwide gameplay reveal on Ubisoft's YouTube channel. Take care.